They say the forests in Sweden are endless, a sea of dark pines that stretch farther than the eye can see. Most people know them as peaceful, safe, a place to hike, to pick berries, to find silence. But those who grew up close to them know better. For the deeper you go, the more the forest changes, and sometimes it changes you. This is the story of a night in a forest in southern Sweden. Locals quietly call it the Dark Grounds, a real place, though few will tell you exactly where. What happened there one autumn night has never left me. It was late September. The air was sharp and the ground was soft with rotting leaves. 4 university students had rented a cabin at the edge of the forest. They were young, restless, and curious. Their plan was simple: spend a weekend hiking, drink a little, tell stories by the fire. Among them was Elin. She was the one who later told me what happened. She was a rational person, a chemistry student grounded in facts, not superstition. But that night changed her. It turned her into someone who no longer laughed at old stories. On their first day, they stopped in a small village shop to buy food. The woman at the counter noticed their hiking boots and backpacks. "You're going into the woods tonight?" she asked. They nodded, smiling. The woman leaned forward, voice low. "Don't go past the stone boundary. You'll see it. Old markers, moss-covered. That's where the forest changes. People don't come back the same from there." They laughed it off. Sweden has plenty of forest myths. Stories of trolls, spirits, ghostly women by the lakes. But the woman's eyes, they were not joking. That evening, the students sat around the fireplace in the cabin. The fire cracked, throwing shadows across the wooden walls. One of them, Henrik, brought up the warning. He said he had heard of the stones too. Old hunters spoke about them. They called the place the Dead Ground, a place where animals avoided going, a place where sound behaved strangely, carrying in circles. The others teased him for believing it. But curiosity was stronger than fear, and they decided they would look for the stones the next day. The following morning, they hiked along the forest paths. The sun cut through the pines, lighting golden dust in the air. They joked, they sang. They were not afraid in the daylight. They even found wild mushrooms and berries filling their bags. But somewhere deep inside, Ellen said she felt watched. Like the trees themselves were leaning closer, listening. By the time night fell, they had forgotten the warning. The fire in the cabin was low. The air inside felt heavy. So they grabbed their flashlights and decided to take a late walk. The forest in darkness was nothing like the forest in daylight. Every branch looked like a hand. Every shadow seemed alive. At first, it was peaceful. The crunch of leaves, the distant call of an owl, the fresh smell of pine. Then they saw it, the stone boundary. Waist-high stones, laid in a broken line, swallowed by moss and time. They paused. The stones looked older than anything around them, half sunk into the earth, leaning like crooked teeth. And then they stepped over. The air changed. The forest grew silent. No birds, no insects, only the sound of their own breaths. And then, something else. Ellen swore she heard footsteps behind them, slow, careful. But when she turned, no one was there. Another friend wrinkled his nose. He said he smelled something sweet, something rotten, like fruit that had been left too long in the sun. Their flashlights flickered. The batteries were brand new. They pressed on, nervous laughter, pretending they weren't afraid. Then came the sound. A woman's voice, faint, humming a lullaby. It drifted through the trees, soft, almost gentle. But no matter which way they turned, they could not place it. It circled them, like the forest itself was singing. They froze when they saw her, a figure standing between the pines, a pale dress glowing faintly in their flashlight beams. Too still, too tall. The head tilted unnaturally, like the neck had been broken long ago. One of them whispered, "Run." And they did. Branches whipped their faces as they sprinted. Flashlights bounced wildly in their hands. Behind them, the humming grew louder. Then it changed. The gentle song broke into a shrill cry, a scream that seemed to come from the ground itself. When they stumbled back over the stone boundary, everything stopped. The forest sounds returned. The air felt normal again. And she was gone. They ran all the way back to the cabin. Inside, silence clung to them like smoke. Nobody wanted to admit what they had seen. Henrik tried to laugh it off, but his voice cracked. They agreed not to talk about it until morning. But the night was not over. Around 2 a.m., Ellen woke to the sound of footsteps outside the cabin. Slow, deliberate, crunching across the wet leaves. She froze in her bed, holding her breath. The others were asleep. The steps circled the cabin once, then again, and then, humming. The same lullaby. But this time, it was right outside the window. Ellen forced herself to look. Through the glass, she saw a pale outline moving in the dark. It swayed side to side, and pressed into the glass was a hand, thin, too long, fingers dragging slowly down the pane. She wanted to scream, but the sound caught in her throat. Then, just as suddenly, it stopped. The forest went silent again. Elin sat awake until sunrise. Her heart beat so loud she thought it would wake the others. When morning came, she told them what she had seen. They went outside to check. In the damp soil, pressed deep into the mud, were footprints. But they weren't theirs. They were too long, too thin, and they circled the cabin. That morning, one of the students refused to stay another hour and left immediately. The rest packed quickly. They didn't speak much on the drive back. Ellen never returned to those woods. She told me the story years later, swearing she still hears that lullaby sometimes, faintly, just before falling asleep. And there is one more thing. A few years after that night, she returned to the village to look for answers. She went back to the same shop. The old woman was gone, but another local told her something. They said the dark grounds used to be the site of a small settlement. In the 1600s, when famine hit, a woman was accused of witchcraft. The villagers claimed she lured children into the forest with songs. She was hanged at the boundary stones. Her body was buried somewhere beyond them. Since then, people say she wanders, not dead, not alive, waiting for someone to cross into her land. And if you ever find yourself walking in the forests of Sweden and pass an old stone boundary, remember this story, because once you step over, you might not come back the same.